Princess Alira sat alone in her crystal chamber, her eyes staring at the blue world floating outside her window. It was called Earth, a strange, wild place filled with chaos, dirt, and humans. She had heard many things about them, how they were loud, untamed, and smelled like metal and smoke. Her people, the Narisans, lived in light and silence. They believed in beauty, order, and power. To them, humans were low creatures. But now, Alira had been ordered to marry one. She clenched her hands tightly. "This is a mistake," she whispered. To herself, "I am the daughter of the Emperor. I cannot marry a human." But her words meant nothing. The council had voted. To protect both empires from war, they had agreed to form a bond between the two worlds, and that bond was her. She would be married off like a trade item. Lyra had begged her father to change the plan, but he had only given her a tired look and said, "You must do this for peace." Meanwhile, on Earth, Daniel Carter was busy fixing a broken water purifier in the outer zone of the space colony. He was a simple engineer, quiet, clever, and known for being patient. When he got the news that he had been chosen to marry an alien princess, he dropped his wrench. "Me?" he said, blinking. This has to be a joke. But it wasn't. He was told it was because of his calm nature, his clean record, and his ability to understand alien technology. They said he would be the perfect match. Daniel didn't want fame or riches. He didn't even want to leave his workshop. But he said yes, because deep down, he believed peace was worth it. The meeting day came faster than anyone expected. Sky over New Earth Station turned silver as the Naresan royal ship arrived. It looked like a floating diamond, glowing softly as it hovered above the landing field. Humans lined up in silence, unsure of how to behave. Reporters whispered. Cameras rolled. Soldiers stood straight. Daniel wore a formal suit, plain and simple, with a small Earth flag pinned near his heart. His hair was brushed back, and he looked nervous but calm. Princess Alira stepped out of the ship wearing a gown made of shining threads that moved like water. Her face was partly covered with a veil. Her long silver hair flowed behind her like a wave. She didn't look at anyone as she walked down the ramp. Daniel took a step forward and gently bowed. She glanced at him for just a second, then quickly looked away. "Greetings, Princess," Daniel said, his voice soft. She didn't reply. Her guard stepped between them, but she raised a hand to stop them. Still she didn't speak. The two were taken to the Unity Hall, where the bonding agreement was to be signed. Translators stood nearby, but no words were needed for silence. Daniel signed first. Then Alira signed, her hand shaking slightly. That evening, they were brought to a shared residence. It was large, with separate rooms for both of them. Alira walked through the place like it was a trap. She touched nothing, sat on nothing, and kept her gloves on. Daniel gave her space. He didn't ask questions or make any sudden moves. Instead, he placed a small tray outside her door every evening, with fresh tea and earth fruit, just in case she wanted to try. For 3 days, she didn't touch anything. On the 4th day, she opened her door and looked at him. He was sitting on the floor, fixing a broken light panel. "Why do you sit there?" she asked. Daniel looked up, surprised. "It's the only spot where the light hum doesn't echo in your room." "I didn't want to bother you," Alira said nothing, and slowly she sat down near the edge of the wall. Not close, but closer than before. "Do you feel no anger?" she asked. Daniel smiled lightly. "I felt confused, but not angry. I don't want to force anything. I'm just trying to make this peaceful." She stared at him for a long time, then stood and left. That night, the fruit tray was empty. The next morning, she spoke again. "Do you wash your hands before you eat?" Daniel nodded. "Always." "After working, too." "It's not always bad, but I keep things clean when it matters." Her lips moved a little. Maybe a smile, maybe not. But for the first time, she sat at the table with him. She didn't eat. She only watched. Daniel told her stories about Earth, about the oceans and the mountains, about the animals and the sky dances. She listened, curious, but still distant. Later, alone in her room, Lyra stared at her hands. "He's not like I imagined," she whispered. "He's not dirty. He's calm." On the 7th night, a storm passed over the station. Through the power towers, the lights blinked. Thunder cracked across the sky. Alira woke up shaking. Shadows reminded her of her childhood cave, the time she was trapped alone for hours. Her heart raced. Then, a soft knock on her door. "Princess." Daniel's voice came gently. "Are you okay?" She didn't answer. But he didn't leave. "I placed a warm blanket by the door," he said. "No need to open, just in case." Opened the door. He stood 3 feet back, his hands at his sides. "You didn't come in," she whispered. "I promised myself I wouldn't," he said. "You've had too many things taken by force. This won't be one of them." Alira's eyes slowly softened. Maybe this marriage wasn't a trap. Maybe it was the beginning of something different. The next morning, the sky was calm again. The storm had passed, but something else had changed too. Princess Alira stepped out of her room, holding the blanket Daniel had left for her. She didn't say anything at first. Daniel was making breakfast, humming a soft tune. She watched him without speaking. "Good morning," he said kindly, turning to face her. She nodded slowly, her fingers gripping the blanket tighter. "I used this last night," she said. "It helped." Daniel smiled. "I'm glad." She sat at the table, still quiet, still unsure. But now the silence between them didn't feel heavy. It felt warmer. Daniel placed a cup of tea in front of her without a word. He sat down across from her and took a sip from his own. The smell of steam and fruit filled the room. Alira lifted her cup and tried it. It wasn't like anything she had tasted before, simple yet soothing. "It's called chamomile," Daniel said. "It's meant to help you feel calm." "Humans drink plants?" she asked softly. Daniel chuckled. "Some of us do. Nature gives us a lot. You just have to know how to use it kindly." Alira looked down at the cup, thinking, "You speak differently than I expected. Not with force." "I don't want to scare you," Daniel said gently. "I just want to understand." They sat in quiet for a while, both sipping tea. For the first time, Alira didn't feel like a prisoner. She didn't feel like someone being traded or trapped. She still didn't fully trust him, but the fear inside her had softened. Just a little later that day, she explored the garden near their residence. The plants were different from the glowing trees of her world. Here, things looked more wild, more natural. She bent down and touched a small blue flower. "That one's called Forget-Me-Not," Daniel's voice came from behind. She stood quickly, her heart skipping, but he stayed back, giving her space. "Why that name?" she asked. "Long ago," Daniel said, "humans believed that giving this flower to someone meant you would never forget them, no matter how far apart you were." Alira looked at the flower again. Such a small thing. Yet it held meaning. Earth was strange that way. Daniel walked beside her, not too close. "Would you like to see more?" he asked. She gave a small nod. He showed her the different paths, the water fountain, the stone bench under a tall tree. She asked questions, and he answered patiently. When she tripped over a root, he moved to help her, but stopped himself, waiting. She looked at him. "You can help me," she said quietly. Daniel reached out carefully and offered his hand. She took it for just a second, long enough to steady herself, then let go. "Thank you," she said, her voice low. "Anytime," Daniel replied. They continued walking. It was slow, gentle, like a beginning. That evening, Alira returned to her room but left her door open. She watched from her bed as Daniel sat in the common area, reading a book. He looked peaceful. She had never seen a male from any species act like that. No demands, no loud voice, no pride. Just calm. She thought about her people's words, how they always called humans dirty, dangerous, and wild. But this man in front of her didn't match those words at all. Days passed. Each day they talked a little more. Lyra started asking Daniel about human music, art, and food. She laughed once when he made a silly joke about space cows. Daniel noticed and smiled, but didn't say anything to make her shy. She asked, "Why did you agree to this marriage?" Daniel answered without hesitation. I didn't want anyone else to be forced into it. And maybe, just maybe, we could make something good from it, even if we are different, she asked. Especially because we are different, he said. Alira sat in thought for a long time after that. The next day, she invited Daniel into her room not for anything deep, but just to show him a small crystal orb from her homeworld. It floated in the air and showed images of her childhood memories trees made of light. Animals with feathers and scales, sky rivers. It's beautiful, Daniel whispered. This was my favorite place, she said, pointing to a cliff where clouds moved below. I used to sit there and imagine flying away. Do you still wish to fly away? He asked. She looked at him carefully, then shook her head. Not anymore. Daniel's eyes met hers, and something unspoken passed between them. Trust was no longer a stranger. They didn't hold hands. They didn't make promises, but they didn't need to. Something small but strong had started to grow between them. Later that night, Alira stood by her window, watching the stars. She didn't know where this path would lead, but for the first time she wasn't afraid of it. Behind her, Daniel placed a soft music disc into the player. Earth melodies filled the room, soft and warm. He didn't ask her to dance, but Alira stepped into the room anyway and sat beside him on the couch. No words were needed now, for the first time. It didn't feel like a forced bond. It felt like something real, something gently beginning. The following week moved slowly, but not uncomfortably. Princess Alira began to wake each morning with fewer knots in her chest. She still kept some distance, still carried the habits of her royal life, but Daniel's presence no longer felt like a danger. It felt more like a steady light. On the fifth morning, Alira found Daniel kneeling on the floor, tools scattered around him. Wires, bolts, and strange parts from both human and Narisan tech were placed on a cloth. What are you doing? She asked, curious. Trying to repair a translator hub, Daniel replied, wiping his hands. The tech from your ship doesn't mix well with ours. I thought I could make something better. You know Narisan systems? She asked, surprised. Just the basics, he said. I studied them after the treaty was signed. Thought it might help someday? She stepped closer. You learned all that? Just in case? Daniel smiled and shrugged. I like learning, and I like building things that connect. Alira knelt down slowly, her royal robe folding around her legs. She picked up a small orb from his tool pile and turned it in her fingers. This is a memory node, she said. You're connecting it backward. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Really? I thought the signal was stronger that way. She said gently, flipping it. Our signals flow from crystal base to tip, not the other way. He nodded, watching her carefully. Thank you. For the next hour, they worked side by side. She handed him tools, explained functions, and once even laughed when he dropped a tiny screw and crawled under the table to find it. This is harder than it looks, he muttered. You humans are clever but clumsy, she teased softly. We make up for it in charm, he replied. Her lips curved, just slightly. When the device finally lit up, Daniel clapped once. It works. Alira looked at the glowing orb. I didn't expect to enjoy this. I didn't expect you to help, he said honestly. Neither did I, she whispered. That night, she stayed in the common room longer than usual. They shared a quiet dinner. She even asked Daniel to play one of his favorite Earth songs. It was slow and calm, with a voice that sang of stars and missing someone you've never met. Do humans feel lonely often? She asked. Yes, Daniel said, but we don't give up. We always hope someone's out there who understands. Alira looked at him. You are not what I feared, and you're not as cold as I was told, Daniel replied kindly. The next morning, she surprised him again. Would you like to see something from my world? She asked, standing near the door. I'd love to, Daniel said. They walked together to the learning dome, a special room where holograms could project full environments. Alira tapped a panel, and suddenly the room was filled with floating trees, soft glowing leaves, and a sky that moved like water. This is the light forest of Shiari, she said. I used to fly here in my personal ship and watch the sun rise. Daniel stepped forward, amazed. This is beautiful. The trees respond to emotion, she added. Watch. She closed her eyes. Her skin glowed faintly. The trees turned a gentle pink. Daniel tried the same. He thought of peace, of warmth, of the way she had smiled during their tool work. The trees turned pale gold. Alira looked at him. Stunned? You changed them. Guess I passed the forest's test. Daniel smiled. No human ever did, she said. They sat under the fake trees, but it felt real. She told him stories about her world, its customs, its colors, its songs. He listened with open eyes and quiet respect. I used to think humans would ruin places like this, she said. But you don't. Maybe not all humans are what you were told, Daniel replied. And maybe not all princesses are proud and cold, she said. They shared a small laugh. Then the dome faded and reality returned. As they walked back, Alira said, You never ask for anything. Should I? Daniel asked. Many would. They'd want rewards, control, or something in return. Daniel looked at her, serious. What I want can't be taken. It has to be given. She paused. What do you want? He looked at her softly. Trust. She stared into his eyes for a long moment. I don't give trust easily. Then I'll wait, Daniel said. No rush. Later that evening, she left a small silver token on his table. This was an Arisan symbol for growth. Daniel picked it up and smiled. Thank you. He placed it next to the earth flower she had. Once asked about Alira, standing behind the door, listened to the silence, and smiled to herself. Days passed slowly, but the quiet grew between Princess Alira and Daniel. Their strange friendship was no longer awkward but comfortable. Alira found herself wanting to share small parts of her world with him, and Daniel listened without judgment or rush. One afternoon, as the pale sun filtered through the tall windows, Alira invited Daniel to the private study room.
Out.
She held a small crystal box, delicate and shining. This is my family's heirloom, she said softly. It holds the story of our ancestors. Only the royal blood can open it. Daniel looked at her with surprise. You want me to see it? Yes, she said. I trust you. Carefully, she placed her hand on the box. The crystal shimmered, and the box slowly opened, projecting a hologram of ancient battles, peaceful times, and wise leaders. Your history is beautiful, Daniel said quietly. And painful, Alira whispered. Many fought to protect what we have, but also many lost. Daniel nodded. Sometimes peace is hard to keep. Yes, she said. And sometimes the smallest act can change everything. They sat together, watching the stories flow. The air between them felt lighter, softer. Later, Daniel showed her a small device. It was a simpler music player from Earth. He pressed play and soft melodies filled the room. Music can heal, he said. It tells stories like your holograms. Alira closed her eyes and let the music wash over her. For the first time, she felt the weight of fear loosen. That evening, Alira stood at the window, watching the stars. Her thoughts drifted to her home world and the heavy crown she carried. Why do you not fear me? She asked suddenly. Daniel turned from fixing a tool on the table. Fear is easy. Trust is harder. But fear builds walls. Trust builds bridges. She looked down, feeling the truth in his words. I am learning to build. A sudden knock at the door broke the quiet. Alira opened it to find a servant with a message. Your father wishes to speak with you, the servant said. Her heart tightened. She hadn't spoken to her father since arriving. Daniel saw the change in her face. Do you want me to come with you? She shook her head. It's something I must do alone. The next day, Alira stood before her father, Emperor Varen. His face was stern but tired. You have changed since you arrived, he said. I am learning, she replied. This marriage is not just for peace, he said. It is a test of strength and will. Alira met his gaze. I will not fail. Remember, he warned, your people watch you closely, and humans. They are not what they seem, Alira bowed. I understand. She left the meeting with a heavy heart, but also a quiet resolve. When she returned, Daniel waited in the garden. She told him everything, not hiding her fears or doubts. He listened carefully, then took her hand gently without pressure. "You are stronger than you think," he said, "and you are not alone." Lyra looked at their joined hands and felt a warmth she had never known. The days turned into weeks. Their bond deepened. She taught him the language of her people, and he taught her Earth's ways. One evening, Alira got hurt while helping Daniel repair a broken console. A sharp edge scratched her arm. She pulled away quickly, embarrassed. Daniel smiled softly and said, "Let me help." He cleaned the wound with care, his hands steady and gentle. Alira watched, surprised at his tenderness. "Humans can be gentle," she whispered. "Only when they want to be," Daniel replied. She smiled, feeling a new trust grow. That night, they sat side by side, sharing stories and hopes. Alira realized she no longer feared her fate. Instead, she looked forward to what was to come. Their worlds were different, but together, they began to build something new. The days after the injury passed quietly, but something inside Princess Alira was shifting. The sharp edge that had scratched her skin was nothing compared to the deeper changes she felt in her heart. Daniel's gentle care had opened a door she never expected to unlock. One morning, Alira stood in the garden again, the soft light playing on the green leaves. She watched Daniel work on a small mechanical bird, twisting tiny gears and parts with patience. "How do you know so much about machines?" she asked, stepping closer. Daniel smiled without looking up. "I like to fix things, broken things, things that don't work right. I think everything deserves a chance to be better." Alira reached out and touched the bird's wing carefully. "Like people?" He looked at her and nodded. "Exactly like people." She smiled, feeling warmth in her chest. For so long, she had believed humans were dirty and wild. But Daniel showed her something different, strength mixed with kindness. That afternoon, Alira invited Daniel to the palace's high hall. It was the place where important meetings were, held full of statues and glowing lights. She wanted to show him her world beyond the palace gardens. "This place is beautiful," Daniel said quietly, his eyes wide as he looked around. "It is the heart of our empire," Alira said. "It holds the stories of our people." She walked slowly, pointing to carvings on the walls that told of ancient heroes and great battles. Daniel listened, fascinated. "Your people have fought hard for peace," he said. Double quotes. "Yes," she answered. "But peace is not easy. It must be protected with courage and care." Daniel nodded. "I understand now why your father wanted this marriage. It's about more than just peace between worlds. It's about trust between very different people." Alira looked at him and smiled softly. "You are learning fast." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the distance between them disappeared. Over the next few days, they spent more time together, sharing small moments that built a quiet bond. Daniel taught Alira how to make simple earth dishes, and she showed him how to use Narisan tools. They laughed when things went wrong, and helped each other when things were hard. One evening, Daniel asked, "What do you fear most, Alira?" She thought for a moment. "Being alone, without someone to understand me, and losing my people's respect." "You won't be alone," Daniel said firmly. "And respect comes from being true to yourself." Alira looked at him, feeling the truth in his words. The night before their official wedding ceremony, Alira stood by the window, looking at the stars. The galaxy seemed vast and full of unknowns, but she felt ready. Daniel joined her quietly, standing beside her. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. She smiled. "I think so. Not because I am not afraid, but because I know I am not alone." He reached out and took her hand gently. "Then let's face this together," he said. The ceremony was simple, but powerful. Leaders from both worlds watched as Alira and Daniel stood side by side, hands joined. Alira spoke with clear voice. "I once feared what I did not understand. But through patience and kindness, I have found strength. Today, I choose to stand with Daniel, not because of duty, but because of trust." The crowd was silent, then a wave of applause rose. Daniel smiled at her. Proud and calm, the marriage was more than a bond between two people. It was a new beginning between two worlds. Later, as they left the hall, Alira whispered, "Thank you for showing me how gentle strength can be." Daniel squeezed her hand. "Thank you for trusting me." Together, they walked into a future full of hope and promise, ready to build a life where differences were celebrated and love was the strongest force. After the wedding, the palace was quiet in a new way. The tension that had filled the halls was replaced by calm hope. Princess Alira and Daniel moved slowly into their new life, not as strangers forced together, but as partners learning to trust. In the days that followed, Alira began to see her new world differently. Earth was not just a strange place full of dirt and noise. It was a place of wonder, of kindness, and of strength hidden in small moments. Daniel was her guide, patient and gentle, showing her the beauty in simple things. One morning, they walked together through a city park. Children played and laughed, aliens and humans mingled freely. Alira watched a small child helping an injured bird, her heart warming. "This is Earth's true strength," Daniel said softly. "Compassion." Alira nodded. "I see it now." Later, they visited the Narisan embassy. The leaders there were watching closely, some with hope, others with doubt. Alira stood tall and spoke clearly. "Our worlds are different, but we are not enemies. With patience and respect, we can build peace that lasts." Her words echoed through the room. Some nodded, others whispered, but no one could deny the change growing in her. Daniel stood beside her, proud but humble. He knew the road ahead would not be easy. Old fears and prejudices did not disappear overnight. But they had started something new, something real. One evening, Alira found Daniel in the workshop, working on a small project. He looked up and smiled. "What are you building?" she asked. "A device to help humans and Narisans communicate." "Better," he said. "Not just words, but feelings too." Alira smiled. "You always find a way to connect." Double quotes. Daniel shrugged. "I guess it's what I do." They sat together, sharing stories of their worlds. Alira spoke of the light forests and the crystal cities. Daniel told stories of Earth's oceans and mountains. Each tale brought them closer. As months passed, their bond deepened, learned from each other, and grew stronger together. Alira no longer feared being dirty or different. Daniel no longer felt like an outsider. One night, as they watched stars from the palace balcony, Alira whispered, "Thank you for taking my hand gently when I was so afraid." Daniel took her hand in his. "Thank you for trusting me enough to let me." They smiled, knowing this was more than a marriage. It was a promise to face the galaxy's unknowns side by side. The galaxy watched their story unfold. The princess who feared a dirty human had found love and strength in his gentle touch. Together they showed everyone that peace was possible when hearts were open, and so their journey continued. Not as enemies, but as friends, partners, and hope for a better future.